여기 세월호입니다. 감독 있습니까?
예, 세월호 진도관을 모시겠습니다. 그 인명 탈출시키는 거는 그 선생님께서 직접 판단하셔갖고 지금 판단을 빠르게 하셔갖고 지금 하시죠.
The first police boat returns from the search site. Parents waiting, bracing. They return one by one in identical plain white bags. Behind the screen, initial inspection. A blanket to cover. Then a short march back to land. Parents rush to the white tents to identify their children. You must have said, "Daddy, save me," weeps this father. No one is immune to the sound of losing a child. As the families leave the tents, so too do the stretchers, emptied, returning to the gurneys that await the next boat. Another group of someone's children. Another march back to the tents. 13 return in this group, but more than 200 are still missing. Gurneys on the left side of the dock, divers board ships to the right to continue the search. To bring the rest home. Kyung-la, CNN, Jindo, South Korea.
예.
진도에서 그 여객길 전환 신고 들었습니까?
예. 지금 저희 지금 현황 파악 중입니다, 지금.
심각한 상황인가요?
지금 현재 지금 시간한지 좀 배하고 통화 중인데요. 지금 일단 배가 좀 기울어서 침수 중이고
예.
아직 침몰은 안 됐고요.
어디 카메라 나오는 건 없죠?
네, 아직 없습니다. 예.
예, 상황실장입니다.
네, 청와대예요.
예, 안녕하십니까.
세금 총장님 어디 계십니까?
여기 상황, 여기 가시 대실이 계십니다.
회의실에 계십니까?
예, 예.
자, VIP 메시지를 전해드릴 테니까
예, 예.
확인해주세요.
예, 예.
첫째, 단 한 명도
Top story is this: the massive operation to raise the sunken Sewol. The ferry sank in 2014 and was recorded as one of the worst maritime disasters in South Korea's history, taking over 300 lives, mostly high school students. Shin Se-min starts us off with the details on that procedure.
It's the first time the SEWOL Ferry has been seen above the surface of the sea since it sunk in the waters around Chindo Island almost 3 years ago. The 145-meter-long, over 6,800-ton ferry emerged from the dark sea water with its surface rusty and scratched. Given the size of the vessel, it's a monumental task, and at the same time, an expensive one too. The Korean government agreed 2 years ago to a deal worth some $76 billion with a consortium led by China's state-run company Shanghai Salvage to raise the ferry. And the operation, conducted both by Korea's Oceans Ministry and Shanghai Salvage, is being carried out in a careful manner, as there are still 9 victims missing and their bodies could still be inside the vessel. That's also the reason why the engineers are taking the vessel out of the water without cutting it into pieces, and have also cast a net around the ferry to help recover the bodies. The marathon operation of lifting the sunken ferry began with raising the ship 13 meters above the water and placing the ferry onto a semi-submersible ship for transport. The sunken ferry will be transported to Mokpo Newport, just 87 kilometers away from the disaster site. The transport is expected to take at least 8 days, depending on weather conditions. If all goes as planned, the recovered ship will be placed at Mokpo Port, and the searching for the missing 9 bodies will begin, as well as some answers to what exactly caused this man-made disaster.
3 years of planning of recovery operation now comes down to 12 to 13 days of execution. And after that, hopefully, comes a recovery of the truth. Shin Se-min, Arirang News, Chindo.
The SEWOL Ferry has arrived at its final destination of Mokpo almost 3 years after it sank in waters off Korea's southwestern coast, leaving 304 people dead. The vessel will soon undergo an investigation to find the exact cause of the disaster and hopefully recover the remains of the 9 bodies that are still unaccounted for. For the latest, let's go live to our Kim Min-ji, who's at Mokpo Newport, where the vessel has just docked. So, Min-ji, the SEWOL Ferry has arrived in Mokpo sooner than expected.
That's right, Dan. I don't know if you can see behind me, but the semi-submersible carrying the SEWOL Ferry is here at Mokpo Newport, arriving just about an hour ago. Now, the voyage comes 1,080 days after the vessel capsized off Korea's southwestern coast and 6 days after the ship was salvaged from sea. Now, the journey took about 105 kilometers. It was initially expected to take 8 hours, but took 2 hours less than that. The vessel, the ferry was escorted by 5 maritime police patrol ships, and some of the relatives of the 9 missing passengers still unaccounted for followed on a barge ship behind.
Well, it's good that there were no delays. Could you tell us a bit more on what happens next?
Sure. Now that the boat is here, over the next 3 days, the seawater and oil will have to be drained from inside the vessel, and the vessel will have to be detached from the semi-submersible. But it's expected to take some time because there are some 50 attachment sites securing the vessel onto the semi-submersible. And after that, a module transporter will be used to get the vessel onto land, which will take about a day. So all in all, officials expect the transfer to take about 4 days, provided the weather remains favorable and there are no problems with the equipment. After that, the vessel will be disinfected and fumigated, which is expected to take about a week. And after that's complete, they will begin the search for the 9 missing bodies and an investigation into the exact cause of the sinking. The disaster left 304 people dead, most of them high school students, in April 2014. A special committee tasked with the investigation will work with the families of the missing to map out a search plan to find them. Back to you, Dallin.
Today, the tragic SEWOL, which has been lying on its side, was set upright after a successful operation to lift and turn the vessel. Kim Mo-kyun updates us on the development that could help the ongoing investigation into the disaster.
On Thursday, the SEWOL Ferry was finally lifted upright, revealing the full shape of the ferry for the first time since it capsized in 2014.
After going through a practice lift on Wednesday, today we were able to safely turn the ferry to its upright position 100 days after we were first given the task.
Leading the operation, local shipbuilder Hyundai Samu Heavy Industries started the lifting process at 9 a.m. on Thursday, pulling 64 wires through a 10,000-ton floating crane that's connected to a total of 66 steel beams installed on both sides of the ferry. The vessel had been gradually pulled upright in 6 stages by tilting the body of the ferry by 35 degrees from the ground to 50 degrees and finally to 90 degrees. Hundreds of people flocked to the southern port, including bereaved families, members of the press, and ordinary citizens.
This kind of things should never happen again. I hope that through today's achievement we can finally uncover the truth behind what exactly caused the ferry to sink and mend the hearts of the victims' families.
Now that the SEWOL has been lifted to an upright position, the SEWOL Investigation Committee says it will install a pathway that can allow access to the ship's interior so that they can start removing hazardous elements. After that, investigators will officially begin to search for any remains of 5 victims that are still unaccounted for, while recovering personal items they find in order to have them returned to their respective families.
Today is a historic day for many of us, including myself. I hope that with the latest development, the remains of the 5 victims who are still missing are found soon. I also hope that nobody ever goes through a tragedy like this. I also hope that nobody in this country would suffer the same pain we went through.
However, investigators say official search operations are unlikely to start for the next few weeks, as the process of safely securing the ferry, including removing the support beams, won't be finished until June 10th. Kim Mo-kyun, Arirang News, Mokpo.
Turning now to the ongoing investigation of the remains of the tragic SEWOL Ferry. The cargo bay and cabins were disclosed to the public 2 weeks after the hull of the SEWOL Ferry was set straight up. An inspection committee plans to resume the search for the missing and investigate the cause of the accident after completing safety reinforcements. Here's a glimpse inside the vessel. The SEWOL Ferry severely corroded portside stands exposed. When KBS reporters stepped inside the cargo bay on the second floor, they were overwhelmed with the stink of gasoline and mud. A climb up the stairs covered by barnacles leads into the kitchen and the lobby where passengers spent a lot of their time. Cabins for male students are located 1 story up on the 4th deck, where Park Young-in and Nam Hyun-chul, 2 still missing students, were last seen. The plywood walls put up during the renovation were gone without a trace, and the bathroom is filled with mud. A broken suitcase bears witness to the harrowing day 4 years ago.
저 안쪽에 캐리어 같은 경우는 지금도 협착부 일부에 끼어 있어서 이제 협착부에 대한 절단을 통해서 이제 향후 수색에 들어갈 계획이고요.
Investigators walk up to the ship's head on the 3rd deck to find partial damage to the right anchor. The underside of the ship's head also suffered damage in various places. The hull inspection committee plans to investigate the steering equipment and ballast water level in the engine room and the steering house, which are still closed due to safety reasons. Meanwhile, the search for the still missing passengers will begin in July.
More clues are emerging about what might have caused the SEWOL ferry to sink. Our Kim Min-ji reports on 3 possible scenarios that occurred one after another.
Around 8:30 a.m. on Wednesday, April 16th, the SEWOL Ferry passed through treacherous waters which are notorious here in Korea for their strong currents. 18 minutes later, the ferry veers suddenly, which is being pointed to as the first factor in the sinking. The stern is believed to have turned 80 degrees to the right.
What it means by the vessel supposedly making a P turn is that the helm was turned to the right, then back again. But the boat didn't come back to its original position. Operations momentarily froze, which results in the ferry making a complete turn.
Due to the centrifugal force, the vessel tilts to the left. Now this is when the second factor may have come in. Grips holding down on the ferry's freight may have come loose, causing containers and vehicles in the cargo compartment to lift sharply to one side. The weight concentrated on just one side of the ferry causes it to tilt even further. If the vessel had enough dynamic stability, the vessel could have bounced back to the other side and maintained balance. However, due to renovations to increase the vessel's capacity, the center of gravity on the ship had been raised from its original design.
Due to the expansion of the ship, the upper structure has been changed, making the center of gravity much higher. If the center of gravity and buoyancy are far apart, the dynamic stability decreases.
Experts say the reduced dynamic stability caused the vessel to completely submerge because it wasn't able to recover from its initial tilt. They add that the SEWOL ferry may not have had enough ballast water, which maintains the balance of the vessel, in order to carry more cargo. As all 3 factors could have been prevented, experts say the sinking will likely be attributed to human error. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.